Hello again. Today we are going to work on what is called cross contour. So we've done a lot of contour drawing, right? A contour is a line that describes a form, both the internal or the external outline of a form and also the internal forms. And so basically what I have here is essentially just a quick gestural contour drawing, right? A cross contour drawing is one where we are sort of drawing lines that really aren't there, and we're drawing lines that cut across the contours of the form to hopefully describe how three-dimensional the form is. So this will be an exercise that will definitely help with shading and drawing value and making our objects look more three-dimensional. So this is a good segue between line drawing and value and shading drawing. Okay, so what I started here is just a really quick sketch. I wasn't overly concerned with getting totally correct proportions. I just mostly just eyeballed it, thinking about intersections, looking at negative spaces, but mostly just wanting to get a basic gist of the forms, because the goal here is to make these forms look three-dimensional without doing any shading. So what I want to do first is I want to look at probably the most simple form in front of me. And so this is what I suggest you set up. Try to find forms like this, maybe 3 or 4, starting with this box-like form, because basically what I'm trying to do is I want to draw lines that cut across in the direction of each plane. And with this box form, and I'll go ahead and make it more noticeable here with just the regular contour lines. Okay, so now that we can see we are able to see 3 different planes. Now what do I want to draw? I want to draw lines that go in the direction of each plane that are cut across each plane. So in this case, since I already have these lines, and vertical lines are pretty easy to draw, now what I'm doing is I added a little bit of depth perspective here, where I made the lines back here a little bit closer together. That's going to help with the illusion of space and perspective, but it's okay if you don't do that. That's fine. Okay, so now I have these lines. So now I have, which help describe this plane. Now what about this plane? Well, this plane is going in this direction. So what I'll do is I will just sort of connect the line that I drew. I'm not sure how far to go because I know that cup handle is there somewhere. So again, I'm kind of following the direction that I have here. Right? So hopefully it's already starting to become more three-dimensional here. Okay. Now this plane, since it's not connecting to any of these lines, so the idea is that if we could see the, let's say here, this was see-through here, or an open form here. So these lines, would be noticeable, right? They would go wrap around this box form, right? But on this plane, since this is a solid form, what I could do is just leave it, because probably just describing those two planes is enough to kind of describe that as three-dimensional. But if you want to, you can go ahead and draw some lines here. But yeah, that's fine. It's really these two planes that are helping describe that it's three-dimensional. Okay, so what's the next easiest, simplest form? I would say the cylinder of the cup. So again, I have the basic shape of the cup here, and I'm not dealing with the cup handle yet. I'll just deal with the cup. And I've got the ellipse, right, that we just practiced in the last lesson here. So make sure this curve is right, because this curve is going to help me draw the cross contour lines. So try to get that. So again, I'm not even really citing this too much, just mostly just eyeballing it, just so I get a right curve. Okay. So this is a little bit different, because instead of having three different planes that are totally easy to tell apart, we have one continuous plane that just changes. So what I want to do first is I want to just arbitrarily just choose or make planes within this cylinder that I can tell. So like the part of the cylinder that's closest to me, I'm going to make two lines that describe this as a plane, even though I know this is curved, but I'm just thinking of it almost like a flat plane. And then we've got another plane on this side, and then it's moving away from here. So I'm essentially doing to the cylinder kind of what is already here in this form. And then another one maybe. And again, it kind of is already starting to look three-dimensional, because I space them closer together, further away from the eye, and further apart, closer to the direction of the eye. So now what do I want to do? So now I have this curve, and we can't see all of it, but this curve here to help with drawing the lines just within this first more frontal plane. So this is called planar analysis, by the way. So I analyzed where the planes are and I drew them out. So now I'm just drawing lines within that front plane, and essentially they're going to be horizontal because it's the one facing us. Now again, using this curve here, so I want to get the lines on this plane and this plane. Again, I'm using these as a guide. So these lines here should be slightly more angled in this direction. Again, that is helping me. So again, see, it's how it's connecting to what I drew here. And then the same thing on this side. Whoop. Yeah. So I'm drawing from an angle, so sitting down, it's not ideal. Okay, so this, hopefully you're starting to see things start to shift and be more three-dimensional. So the same thing on these planes. See how that and that. See that. And then on this one. So that the idea is that it should look almost like I took rubber bands and they're just wrapped around. So again, like if this was see-through, we would be able to see the other side of these rubber band ellipses on the other side of the cup, right? So again, hopefully it's all starting to look a lot more three-dimensional just with lines. So what I do with the handle, because the handle actually has some subtle changes. So it's got a plane at the top. So let me outline the handle a little bit better. And then it's got a plane. So it kind of flattens out here. And it's a plane here. Comes up. So the proportions are not quite right, but the idea of the shape at least. So this part here is kind of flat. So I'm going to draw just a light line to kind of separate this side plane and this plane, because of the side plane, it's kind of going in like this. And then I see it here. So right, so we have this kind of swings around, and then the top plane is going like this. And then at some point it's going to shift because it's going to be more like this. It's a little bit flatter here. So notice how in this top plane, so let me draw this line just kind of, you can see the front plane here, and then it kind of just rounds out like a little bit. We see this plane becoming that side plane, and this top plane here. All right. So again, it's hopefully starting to look three-dimensional. So let me get to these other forms. This one here is pretty simple. So I'll just kind of quickly show you this, and it has already some implied contours that's going to help us, but I'm also going to do a quick analysis of the planes. Alright, I got these to help with this process. Helps me do this. This helps me, so I'm looking at these lines that I've already kind of indicated what the curve is. All right, so hopefully that's starting. I think this should be a little bit more. If I want to, I could do this sort of thing. Okay. Now what about Mr. Totoro here? So in this case, what I'm going to do is there's a lot of different ways I could approach this. So I could, first off, maybe I will, well, let me solidify his overall outer contour first a little bit more. because that's going to help as guide me. Okay, so what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line down the middle. And as I'm doing it, I know that it's going to shift, like the way his head kind of comes in. So kind of like this. So this comes out and then comes back in. So this midpoint line is going to do a similar thing. It's going to come back in and then jet back out a little bit. I know I'm probably exaggerating his tummy a little bit. It's okay. And then just like this jets back under, this is going to go back under there. So that is already starting to help describe his form. Then, so I could continue. I could do, let's say, another one, maybe about here. And maybe one over here. So make sure I'm keeping, so there's sort of a curve here of his neck. So that's going to help me with the lines going this way. So the idea is like this would wrap around, go behind his back, right? So that would look like that. Now this is a little bit tough. So we have this ear here, and what I'm thinking, actually, his ear is more like this. So again, I'm just sort of imagining these lines cutting across his body, different directions. So that's probably enough then to kind of get started with these lines that cut across his body. I'm still mostly looking at the form of Totoro himself. And I'm just trying to draw lines that hopefully, now this point with the arm, it starts to come up. So I think actually I'm going to shift, because there is a shift between where his head is and his arm is. So I'm actually going to come up more like this to describe how his arm is, and then but I'm keep going in this direction for his body part. So even though I didn't go down each individual plane, I'm still looking at how the planes shift. Same with his legs here. Same with his head. I could have gone kind of like this too with it, like almost like a globe, right? A globe pattern. His ear, so we've got a lot of flatness in the front, and then it kind of rounds out the side. And this is pretty much all just round. His nose in there. So, all right. Well, that hopefully these forms are, starting to look three-dimensional, and if we want to, we could kind of add to that by making some of the lines darker in some parts. So if I make them darker on the ends here, they'll start, maybe I'll make this plane darker. So of course I'm not agreeing with any sort of light logic, you know, like if there's a light source this way, then this side would definitely be darker than this side. If I wanted to, I could also do cross contours on the inside of the cup that kind of follow planar changes too. Okay, so try some of this before we start shading, and this is definitely going to help you with value and shading.